Archaeologists have discovered a huge ancient city hidden underground in Mexico, which may give a better understanding of the Maya civilization.
It would accommodate thousands, if not 10,000s of people.
The disappearance of the Maya civilization has remained a mystery, leaving us with only ruins and riddles. A groundbreaking DNA test has revealed the truth of where they came from, something that is much more awful than we could ever have imagined. In a sealed room, scientists discovered remains that surprised them. Their DNA has an impossible sequence from a gene that rewrites the very foundation of human history. It is already recognized as more than a new finding. It is the unraveling of a dark secret. This discovery suggests that the Maya were connected to something wonderful, something that is outside of convention. But when researchers followed that connection deeper into the jungle, they found something buried that defied all human explanation. What was it?
The new forms of artwork, we see writing.
Writing is a huge development in any civilization, in any era of the world.
The obsidian anomaly. Deep in the Patin Basin, Guatemala, there is one of the most breathtaking archaeological finds ever unearthed. The Patin Basin is one of the most congested, unexplored regions throughout the entire Mayan world. A study team conducted an extremely detailed restoration project in the region, employing ground-penetrating radar on the foundations of the fallen temples, located in the massive city of El Mirador. The equipment picked up something that is absolutely hard to believe. There was a geometric, completely circular void located over 40 feet below the pyramid's foundation. Nature is full of circles, but completely circular shapes are extremely uncommon, catching researchers' attention from the start. To start with, the team had reason to believe that there was a cave there. However, once excavations began, the rock that was encountered did not seem to be exactly what the team was looking for. The rock had miraculously smooth sides, cut with the precision of highly advanced technology, with some sort of cementing agent that was hard, even compared to the toughest cement used today, much less the primitive stuff the Mayans had originally used to build their structures. The team's geologists conducted an in-depth analysis of the rock type itself, looking for rock formations that somehow did not match anything naturally occurring in the area. Then came the big discovery, the presence of a sealed doorway composed of one massive piece of limestone rock about the size of the opening itself. The rock had carvings on its surface, but these did not resemble Mayan carvings one bit. Some resembled pre-Olmec. The rest were completely unknown, and the carvings also seemed to be coated with some sort of dust, possibly from disuse or ore buildup, or possibly something much, much stranger. The team also noticed that the rock emitted highly unusual readings on the magnetic scans, even with the probable metal deposits within the rock itself acting against the scan process. After these days of painstaking preparation, the team was able to breach the slab. A rush of compressed air burst out, unveiling a 23-foot wide circular room. The room was lined with a dark, glass-like material that looked akin to obsidian, but instead of reflecting the light from their lamps, the material had an absorptive quality to it, much like ebony. The air was also much chillier compared to the jungle temperature, with the room being characterized by total silence. The room was occupied by the three old bodies seated on three pedestals, with their legs crossed, surrounded by jade jewelry, metallic discs, and crystal shards arranged in comfortable seating positions. Most people failed to notice the quality of the preservation upon initial observation. The site was situated in the tropics, with humidity levels that caused decomposability, but the site was untouched. The air inside also seemed untouched, retaining its constant temperature, which was about several degrees lower compared to the temperature level on the outside. However, the biggest puzzle was the people themselves. It was observed that their skull was long, but that was really nothing compared to the head binding practiced by the Maya. It was also clear from the analysis that the bone density indicated genetic, rather than artificial, adaptation. The carbon dating was even more mind-boggling. The organic fibers in the burial chamber date to about 12,400 years old. The implications were staggering. The burial chamber and the people were all much, much older than the Maya, existing before the recording of history in the Americas even began. The direct comparison with other pre-Columbian cultures indicated that nothing even remotely similar was discovered in terms of the level of advancement of these structures. In itself, the discovery of the remains was sufficient to rewrite the history books, but it is the follow-through in the lab that will be even more historic in its importance. The early DNA analysis found the body had the mitochondrial DNA of haplogroup A2, common in the native populations of the Americas. However, the deep sequencing indicated something that was impossible to explain. Sections of the DNA had failed to match the human data on record, with the initial reaction being that the samples must be contaminated. However, the same pattern was true for all three individuals. The sequence was in the non-coding areas of the genome, long believed to be junk DNA. Then there was the patterned motif with mathematical precision that could in no way be attributed to random variation. When the pattern was laid out, the sequence revealed the ratio of its recurrence to be nearly the same as the pattern described in the Fibonacci series. This was impossible. They had discovered a code deep within one of the strands of the DNA molecule from 12,400 years ago. They labeled the phenomenon Sequence X473, consisting of human sequence, non-human sequence, and everything in between. However, the genetic code discovered was more than just some remote pattern. The sequence was the same, but in the context of the discovery, it was completely different. The scope was broad indeed. The geneticists from the group conducted massive comparison studies with the sequence from today's human DNA, noting that the genetic makeup of the ancient society had developed in ways that, if occurring within the current human DNA, would, without question, result in thousands of years of evolutionary adaptation occurring over time. The mathematical precision of the discovered DNA sequence indicated levels of genetic engineering skill yet unseen. The archaeologists soon realized that the resultant discovery went against the current body of record in the scope of human evolution throughout the Americas, the development of their respective civilizations, or the technology used. The resultant discovery has sparked intense debate amongst the international community of the sciences. Proposed hypotheses include the possibility that the existing find points towards the possible forms or structures left from the possible existence of some unknown advanced civilization existing before the formation of any other type of civilization within the Americas. Others argued on the other side of the table with other possibilities. An unknown process or event occurred leading to the existing genetic material being conserved. However, the mathematical precision with which the sequence appears, along with the level of engineering in the construction of the room, made these, shall we say, remote possibilities merely that. The outcome of the historic discovery has now placed its own researchers at the edge of the future, allowing their own portals to be opened up into the study of human discovery, with discoveries about advanced civilizations that had already been discovered before the existence of recorded time. The more the researchers learn about the site and its inhabitants, the more they are compelled to question the way we think we understand the course of human history and the progression of civilization in the Americas. But just when they thought they'd reached the limits of the past, an even stranger revelation emerged, one defying science itself. Could this change everything we know about human origins? Sequence X, 473. It soon became an unsettling discovery. Rather than merely the traces of ancient DNA, researchers uncovered something astonishing: active genetic material. Confirmation by another university was necessary to verify the amazing properties of these bizarre DNA strands, characterized by the name sequence X473, which possessed subtle bioatomic properties. Under the application of ultraviolet rays, the samples emitted wavelengths comparable to those of deep-sea animals possessing the bioluminescent trait. A strange event presented two crucial questions. What was the connection between the remains of human bodies discovered inside the jungle cave and the glowing property of deep-sea animals? An extensive search was conducted on all genetic databases worldwide, but there was no match, neither with any existing nor extinct species. The work of proof clearly pointed to the phenomenon of hybridization, but the design seemed obvious. A breakthrough occurred when researchers studying the excavation site took enlarged pictures of the hieroglyphics inscribed on the entry door of the chamber. The minute design of the spirals, the star formations, was emailed to the genetics lab, but the researchers there were shocked to observe that the minute design of the base pairs matched the hieroglyphics inscribed on the stone entry door perfectly. Obviously, there was design involved here, and there was much more to follow. The consequences of this are staggering. What the builders of this room had comprehended 12,000 years ago was the basics of genetic engineering. They had already succeeded in incorporating their religious iconography into the biology of the races. A prominent geneticist had proposed a theory so avant-garde that it was classified the moment it was made. Defying all conventional forms of classification in the field of genetics, its intent was, instead, a complex means of storing data. The DNA was, instead, a biological hard drive, with the sections of the existing genetic material that had theretofore been recognized as non-biological indeed, carrying information. When converted for interpretation in binary, these areas of the DNA disclosed recurring numerical constants that matched, with absolute precision, the astronomical ratio between Venus's orbitals and Earth's, the ratio of Earth to the Sun. This enabled an entirely different paradigm. The room was, instead of an answering ledger, an archive room, with its inhabitants, instead of being human, merely vessels, bearers of the universe's secrets, housed within their DNA. Further study on the skeletal system revealed even more irregularities. The calcium isotopic ratio revealed that these people had lived in an area with substantial oxygen levels, something that had not occurred in the area for over 10,000 years. However, many questions still lingered about the identity of these mysterious beings. Were these people some undiscovered branch of the human family? Some lost line before the Mayans? The real answer was even more bizarre than that. The sequence X473, this genetic irregularity, was represented by more than 3 people who lived 12,000 years ago. In the final unbelievable study, genetic researchers made one last comparison with today's populations and discovered the unmistakable match. This sequence had not ceased to exist, but lay dormant, existing in today's human populations. The discovery marked the beginning of intense debate among the scientific community. Researchers began speculating on the possibility that this remote civilization had the knowledge for more than just basic astronomical observation. The precision of genetic engineering could easily demonstrate its advanced level of quantum physics abilities, let alone some biotechnology. More clues emerged from the way the room was designed, with accurately aligned astronomical bodies featuring geometric shapes that mirrored those of DNA. Well, I think there are some pretty profound questions raised about human evolution, and the implication that perhaps old civilizations had the same level of technology we have today. But with the emergence of geneticists working to uncover the qualities of sequence X473, there began the recognition of the slight variations of the sequence appearing in isolated cultures across the globe. It shows the worldwide effect of the sequence X473, which challenges the conventional ideas of human migration and the development of human culture. Archaeologists across the world began to question the interpretations of the archaeological finds from previous human cultures, with the belief that there had to be some type of knowledge evidence for human cooperation or the science of genetics itself. It heralded a new frontier of inquiry into the human condition itself and exposed possibilities for the development of previously unexplored knowledge structures that could expand our comprehension of human experience. These are developments that could ensure further breakthroughs in medicine and biotechnology in the future. As the implications began to weigh in, it was realized that this lost civilization might hold the key to many of the most contentious issues of our times. The importance of such findings obviously stimulated academics' interest, since scholars felt that an understanding of this ancient culture could revolutionize modern methodology in medical research and technological development. Their sophisticated methods of genetic engineering promised to cure diseases that were otherwise considered incurable. Their understanding of quantum physics was extensive, and they had applied it both at the level of biological systems and in architecture. This, again, had led to novel applications in energy production and the development of new materials. The ease with which they married theoretical physics to practical engineering bespoke an unprecedented interdisciplinary understanding, suggesting that their approach to doing science must be very different from ours. The discovery of this lost world was important, not simply as an archaeological discovery, but more importantly as a recovery of knowledge for mankind. This exposed a whole new dimension in which humanity could take a different turn toward its future. While this revelation contained extraordinary insight, it also presented some disturbing implications. The ethical considerations alone required thorough scrutiny, as modern society grappled with balancing the potential benefits against the moral responsibilities carried by such advanced technology. What might have propelled such an advanced civilization, so fully equipped with developed genetic engineering, into a transition that left them in ruins? How might we understand such a change, explain it, or even justify it, if there is a proper explanation for it? Why would only the remnants of such an advanced society survive in the ruins and artifacts left behind? Did the degradation happen gradually or catastrophically? Was it something to do with the environment, or could it be some form of self-inflicted, degradative side effect of their technological advancement? Questions like these remain intriguing to researchers, challenging our assumptions about what constitutes sustainable progress. Scientists discovered that the answers lay within living human genes themselves, or what might be termed the blueprint of humankind. This genetic foundation shapes humanity's future, representing our biologically created, synthesized, and explained nature. Through studying ourselves, scientists are effectively declaring the blueprint of humanity's future outline, derived directly from our genetic code. The ongoing research suggests that our ancestors possessed a profound understanding of the intricate relationship between genetics and consciousness, knowledge that could fundamentally change our understanding of human evolution and destiny. But what if the secrets hidden within our genes weren't just biological, but ancestral? Could living bloodlines still guard forbidden knowledge today? Guardians of the Old Blood. The database lit up with a low-frequency match and showed samples collected many decades ago for reasons unrelated to this research. These samples came from a far-flung highland community in the Yucatan Peninsula and created a surprise link to ancient history and modern times. Research teams were immediately sent out to such isolated villages where people lived in difficult areas, far away from the large urban centers. These communities retained many of their ancient customs and oral traditions that had been passed down for generations. Advanced DNA testing provided clear evidence. Faint, degraded traces of sequence X473 persisted among a small percentage of individuals. The implications proved staggering. From the medical perspective, the sequence seemed to affect cellular behavior in subtle but significant ways. Laboratory experiments showed that cells containing X473 demonstrated faster tissue repair and unusually high memory-related neural activity. These groups had shown inexplicably high immunity to certain infections for generations. But even more astonishing was the cultural connection. The anthropologists interviewing village elders recorded strange phrases. The elderly talked about being carriers of ancient bloodlines. Their oral traditions passed on through countless generations warned against intermarriage with outsiders. Not because of prejudice, but to avoid a loss of balance, as they put it. They had been unknowingly maintaining genetic uniqueness. They had been protecting the sequence. When researchers showed the enhanced images of spiral glyphs from the 12,000-year-old chamber to the elders, a few of them immediately recognized them. They called them the breath of the sky. This wasn't just folklore, this was a genetic memory handed down from before Maya times. Yet, further mystery shrouded the origin of the DNA. Researchers looked at broader data sets and found microfragments everywhere. Minute trace amounts in South Pacific Islanders, northern Andean peoples, and even some Arctic groups. The sequence didn't have a common ancestor. It was impossible to trace its origin using modern genetics models. It simply hadn't evolved. It seemed to be an insertion of code, a fragment of information inserted from time to time into human populations around the world, across thousands of miles and millennia. The truth was growing clearer by the minute. DNA, ancient individuals, and living descendants together formed one massive system. But what was the other half? DNA was the software. What was the hardware? The answer was just a few miles away, and most remarkably, it was still on. The revelation brought together an unprecedented collaboration between disciplines. Geneticists, anthropologists, and archaeologists joined computer scientists in trying to understand the meaning of this mystery. The research center was buzzing with feverish activity as different scientists shared their various expertise. According to Dr. Maria Rodriguez, a leading geneticist, its presence in these geographically distant populations defied conventional evolutionary patterns. We're not just looking at random genetic drift here, she explained. This is something far more complex. Something that challenges our fundamental understanding of human genetic history. The uniqueness of the sequence itself further complicated the team's findings. It did not follow the normal stories of genetic inheritance and seemed correlated with particular cultural knowledge across different civilizations. For instance, for Andean groups, it had to do with sophisticated knowledge of agriculture passed through generations. For the Arctic culture, it seemed associated with sophisticated navigational skills before the invention of modern technologies. And for the South Pacific Islanders, an astonishing understanding of ocean currents and the behavior of marine life that could not be explained by what could have been considered conventional learning. As the researchers examined the mystery more deeply, subtle patterns began to emerge in the brain activity of the affected community. The brain activity patterns conveyed an unusual level of connectedness among the people, as if these affected people had somehow become part of some larger network. Dr. John Taylor, a neuroscientist on the team, observed, "The brainwave patterns we're seeing are unlike anything previously documented. It's as if these individuals are accessing information that isn't stored in their personal memories, but rather in some kind of collective reservoir." The cultural implications were just as deep. The village elders' tales, previously regarded as no more than myth, assumed a new importance. Their taboo against intermarriage with outsiders was not prejudice, but preservation of genetic integrity. They were unwittingly guarding not just their culture, but a biological heritage reaching back millennia. The spiral glyphs they knew as the breathtaking of the sky recurred throughout ancient civilizations, always in association with high knowledge and enigmatic technologies. The finding raised essential questions about the history of humanity and the beginnings of civilization. If this series was indeed an intentional insertion, who could do such a thing? And why go to the trouble of creating this global genetic network? The scientists had come upon a point of intersection between science and mystery, where observation contradicted established reasoning in human evolution. During their continuation with the investigation, they could not help but wonder, were they examining evidence of an ancient civilization that was perceived to be much more advanced than was ever considered? Or perhaps something even more remarkable? It was a thrill and disastrous gladness when the answer finally came. Deep underground, only a few miles from the laboratory, lay an ancient structure that was unexplained. It wasn't a ruin, but functional, humming with a soft vibration that seemed to resonate on the same frequency as the spiral glyphs. The team was filled with excitement, which quickly became awe, as they understood they were witnessing technology operational for eons, patiently waiting for mankind to summon the wherewithal to understand what it was for. The DNA sequence was indeed more than mere genetic code. It had been a key, a switch amidst a global circuit, and as they all observed in amazement, the system stirred to action and was at last within the reach of human purpose. But just when they thought the mystery had reached its end, the Earth itself began to answer their discovery. How? A pulse from below. While genetic researchers searched for clues in blood samples, remote sensing teams made a startling discovery. Their findings uncovered a second anomaly, well over 10 times larger than the first. Far beneath the jungle canopy, buried under layers of ancient ash and limestone deposits, lay a perfectly symmetrical ring formation. It measured roughly 300 feet in diameter, making it enormous. Unlike any ordinary sinkhole, this find was something very different, almost an engineered construction. Scientists took core samples to reveal materials that shouldn't exist in nature. The ring was made up of sophisticated metal alloys, including titanium, vanadium, and iridium, all metals that require incredibly high temperatures to process. The surrounding volcanic glass had metallic particles embedded in it, evidence that it had been exposed to more than 3,000 degrees Celsius. No pre-industrial civilization could have achieved such a feat. This wasn't just a temple, it was an advanced technological device. But perhaps most amazingly, the structure hummed. Magnetometric readings indicated that the ring produced low-frequency electromagnetic pulses. Faint, yes, but the pulse pattern was remarkably regular, repeating every 11 minutes with incredible consistency. What the purpose of the structure was remained a mystery to the research team. Was it some kind of astronomical device? An energy source? Initial measurements seemed to indicate it extended far deeper than their equipment could penetrate. This wasn't just a machine, it was a beacon. The team decided to map the pulse pattern, converting the electromagnetic frequency into a numerical ratio. Their reaction bordered on disbelief when they discovered that the pulse pattern from the 300-foot metallic ring matched the mathematical ratio of sequence X473 perfectly. A connection between the machine and DNA was unmistakable. Consider the implications. A piece of buried impossible technology was actually communicating with a unique genetic sequence found only in the local guardians of the old blood. These two elements formed part of the same system and pulsed at identical frequencies. The structure was, for all intents and purposes, talking to the special DNA. That made the investigation go from a lost civilization hypothesis to something entirely different. Or was the machine not just communicating with the DNA but powering it somehow? Or was it the people themselves who functioned as a sort of power source? Was this some kind of living biological battery network designed to keep this ancient machine on standby? Or maybe the most terrifying hypothesis of all surfaced. What if the ring wasn't sending a message, but rather a directive? An instruction encoded in electromagnetism that was telling that unique DNA to do something, to change in some way, to come online. As a full analysis of the structure's properties got underway, excitement mounted among the research team. Advanced ground-penetrating radar and thermal imaging equipment were brought in to map out the full extent of the ring. Data showed that the structure did not just go down, but seemed to form a network of chambers and conduits. The chief geologist, Dr. Maria Rodriguez, head of a team specializing in ancient structures, led the excavation of carefully planned test trenches. Her team found that the surface of the ring was covered with microscopic patterns, which were too fine to be seen with the naked eye and which seemed to shift and change under different wavelengths of light. The finding ignited a heated debate within the research team. Dr. John Taylor, a quantum physicist called in as a consultant, theorized that the structure was manipulating quantum fields in order to produce its effects. He postulated that the temperatures of 3,000 degrees Celsius were not simply due to construction, but could be evidence of quantum tunneling effects. His theory was corroborated by unusual readings from sensitive quantum fluctuation detectors placed around the perimeter. Meanwhile, the genetics team had another surprising find. The X473 sequence was not a passive DNA. It contained intricate mathematical patterns that mirrored the structure's pulse frequency. When they tried to sequence the DNA in detail, they found that it seemed to shift and change its configuration in response to the structure's emissions. A radical new theory now emerged. The DNA wasn't just a key to understanding the technology, it might be an integral part of the machine itself. The findings drew the attention of numerous scientific fields to the team. Archaeologists pointed out similarities between the design of the structure and megalithic structures all over the world. Astrophysicists were very interested in its possible connection to events in the cosmos, especially the Younger Dryas. The discovery also drew the attention of materials scientists who were eager to understand how such an advanced alloy could have been created using pre-industrial technology. Word of the discovery spread, and, accordingly, the site of research turned into the latest epicenter of international scientific collaboration. Major research institutions began sending in field teams to add their know-how. A high-tech research facility with the latest and most sophisticated equipment was assembled for the purpose of investigating every slight detail of the structure. The team rigorously worked day and night, knowing they were on the cusp of a discovery that would challenge the widely held ideas of historical and technological development in human culture. The consequences were immense. If this structure was indeed 12,000 years old, then it challenged everything we thought we knew about the advance of technology by human beings. The use of materials that are beyond anything we currently use, with quantum-level technology, suggested the possibility that ancient civilizations had possibilities for advanced metaphysical intellectual capabilities that no modern scientists could even have dreamed of. The DNA connection raised questions over the nature of the evolution of human beings and whether or not something external to human evolution participated in the development of human beings as we know them today. The research is still ongoing. Scientists are working continuously to unravel the secrets of this ancient marvel. Each new invention raises more questions, but the possibility that they might eventually discover aspects of technology beyond anything humanity has ever used keeps this engaged team of scientists moving forward. The structure represents the ingenuity of our ancestors, or something more remarkable than our ancestors. It represents a bridge between human history and the dawn of a future that we can hardly imagine. We hope you enjoyed our video today, and if so, be sure to leave a thumbs up. And don't forget to also subscribe and turn on the notifications bell so as to be notified whenever we make a new upload. See you in our next video.